The Main Quest, a website dedicated to horses in video games and video games about horses, recently published an article entitled "We've learned a lot, but our mission to make great horse games hasn't changed," reflecting on Equestrian the Game with Kavalri Games' Molly Eriksson. For those of you who have been on this channel for a while, you are probably curious about the article, because ETG has gone through a lot in only a few years, starting with the shutdown of their Discord server, going on to the use of AI art and false advertising, and ending with a sudden shift to aggressive microtransactions. All of this has seen a lot of players turn away from the game. Beyond being overly priced, the gameplay has always been rather dull, and the breeding takes too damned long to enjoy. Take a page out of Rival Star's book, please. The article dives into all of these issues, and the CEO Molly tries to explain what happened and, of course, why it happened. And the answers are not exactly being well received, as we can see by the comments on the Facebook and in the Discord for the Main Quest. This video is going to go over the article, explain what really happened, and let the moderators of the original Discord give their thoughts on the matter. But before we get into all of that, I'd like to thank my Ko-Fi supporters for being more awesome than a burger and chips. I'm currently on a very strict diet and I am starving. So yeah, burger and chips please. Let's get into it. My frustrations with the game and why I pretty much stopped playing are really exclusive to the gameplay, features, and implementation. So the first question that the interviewer Alice Rupert asks is, how was ETG doing? We're doing good, says Molly. Since the launch in 2022, it's been all about building the features we had always seen before us. Working on seasons and content updates, we've been very busy. Let's go over exactly what they have been doing and just use this to briefly go over the original game. On the 8th of June 2022, the game was launched globally as a completed game, a full release. The game's initial main features were show jumping, realistic horse models and dressage animations, and a ton of cosmetics to buy with, well, real money. Since the initial launch, they have added a breeding feature on the 22nd of June, a lot of cosmetics that were mostly recolors, a bunch of new seasons. They have had a total of 19 seasons, with 8 unique seasons in total. Seasons offer a game pass which give you rewards like feed, tack and clothing, but no premium currency. The seasons are today often repeated, with some getting a lot more repeats than others because they came in earlier. The last new season that was added was on the 17th of February 2024, and that was for the Midwest. And in total, 5 new horse breeds have been added to the game. What is interesting to note is that the first new horse breed only came out a year later in June of 2023, the quarter horse. The rather unfortunate quarter horse. Poor horse. Of the 5 new horse breeds they added, 2 of them have been exclusive to game passes, which include the new Shire. So you have to pay real money to get them. But at least we get horses now in the game pass, making the passes more appealing. For only £40. So not expensive. And the Pinto code works on the same principle. You have to buy it for 75 coins, which comes up to around £8, and the Pinto code was only added a few months ago on the 7th of May 2024, a full 2 years after release, and a full 6 years after people voted for a Pinto coat on the Arabian horse during development. Except for the breeding, they haven't really added much gameplay. No cross-country, no dressage, no horse care, nothing. Zilch. It's only been horse breeds, seasons, and cosmetics. The article continues. The breeding feature so far has been limited to solid colors, but it has always used realistic genetics as a basis, pleasing the sort of horse nerd who knows you have to pair a cremello and a bay to get a guaranteed buckskin. It's me, I'm that sort of horse nerd. The breeding in the game is both good and terrible. On the one hand, genetics are fairly accurate and crossbreeding is a seriously awesome perk to have. With that being said, there are a lot of problems that still need to be addressed that have nothing to do with genetics and everything to do with quality of life and good game design. The breeding has ridiculous wait times, up to 4 days per breeding, and of course, if you want to speed it up, you have to pay real money or watch multiple ads. On top of that, you have inbreeding. Over time, your horses become less and less available to breed because they are too closely related to each other. The way that Kavalri wanted to combat this originally was with a multiplayer breeding feature allowing you to breed with other players' horses. They might still add this, but there is no guarantee that they will, and they will not remove the inbreeding because it forces players to go to the marketplace and potentially spend real money on horses they might like. It's not really for realism's sake, it is a subtle screw that is slowly being tightened that will force you to buy eventually. Furthermore, the stables have remained at 32 horse capacity in total. To get the max capacity, you have to pay real money. Of course you do. What's more, if your stables are full and you want to keep the foal, you have to sell one of your current horses in order to make space. And that decision happens before you actually see if the new foal is any good. This places you in the unenviable position of hoping the new foal is good enough to be kept and praying you don't sell a better prospect. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean foal, I mean horse, because we don't have foals in this game. So the poor mare is pushing out a 500-pound animal every time she gives birth. And in case you're wondering, we won't ever get foals. According to a video posted on the 30th of September titled ETG, What is Coming Up and Thea Saying Goodbye, they make it clear that they will not be adding aging, even though ages are in the game, no foals, even though breeding is in the game, and no retirement, which would have helped to alleviate the stable space, but whatever. And on top of all of that, they also have no horse care whatsoever. It doesn't stop them from advertising it, but before we get into that, let's get into the next paragraph. In Kavalri, a 3-person team has been working exclusively on the Pinto feature under the leadership of developer Jasmine Olin. Jasmine really deserves a special mention for adding the whole new dimension in the breeding system, Molly says. She's been consulting experts in the field and looking at gene-tested horses to analyze and explore how different white pattern interact with each other. Although a lot in this article is a mess, as we'll see, this section was wonderful. It's nice to see developers put in so much time into projects, and good on Jasmine for putting so much effort into not only adding the Pintos, but making them damn well worth the wait. Now we can finally get into the next section: community, feedback, and boundaries. I quit with the Discord incident. I gave feedback on their Instagram, not all of it was bad, and got blocked by them. I have been following them since early development. It was like, wow, okay, so if you can't handle legit constructive criticism, you can't handle actually improving this game. Cool. Another aspect of the game's creation and maintenance that Molly used to be handling herself and has since stepped back from is its community management. Kavalri had set up a Discord server for its players, initially intended to be a space for a few dozen select beta players to give in-depth feedback. During that time, Molly talked to testers one-on-one, was available by direct messages, and even hopped on calls sometimes to clarify specific bits of feedback. It was a very personal experience, Molly says, and it took a lot of time. I would spend full days doing that, which was valuable and needed at the time, but led to some players getting used to having a direct line to me. Oh boy, let's get into the big one. Many of these beta testers that Molly mentioned would become moderators for the Discord server. Their main job was to organize the server, handle queries from players, and ensure the space was kept positive. At first, all of this was fine. The developers were still in constant communication with the mods, and those mods, in turn, could give proper information to the players coming into the Discord. But it didn't stay like that. Around the game's release, the server was open to the public and quickly grew from about 30 members to over 9,000 within weeks. The same kind of availability and personal interaction became impossible to maintain due to sheer volume. True, but there's more to it than that. Before the game ever reached the size it is now, the moderators were handling the Discord, the YouTube lives, and even Instagram. They were everywhere, helping Equestrian the Game as much as they could. However, after the soft launch, the moderators felt the devs were not as active as they used to be. This was most keenly felt in the way the beta testing feedback was being treated. Basically, it was ignored. This resulted in a moderator finally speaking up and saying, "Guys, so much of the stuff you promised isn't out yet. These and these bugs we have reported haven't been fixed yet. Do you really think it's time for the soft launch? I haven't touched the game much because it gets boring so quickly. I don't think this will work out. It bothered me a lot that there was no way at all to earn premium currency through hard work, too. And I also criticized that. None of the stuff I ever said was commented on by the team much at all." and this would result in them getting fired shortly thereafter. This might be a bit hard, but the team has been reading the moderator chats and they've felt that you've been a bit negative lately, and we can't really tolerate that. Sadly, we'll have to remove your moderator role and replace it with a beta tester role for now. There's always a chance that the mod ambassador role could be reinstated to you though. We just want to thank you for everything you've contributed in helping ETG's community and Discord. You've been a real trooper, but we feel that you need to step down and focus on the game. Yes, the game did grow exponentially, Molly, and the Discord expanded quickly, but the moderators were the ones who were managing this Discord, as anyone who had been in that Discord will tell you.
I was there, Gandalf. I was there 3,000 years ago.
They were desperately trying to get your attention to correct your poor communication line and fix your non-existent management. But instead of acknowledging the issues, you silenced people who were not agreeing with you and even fired them. I'm going to grab a direct quote from one of the ex-moderators. You didn't have to be available to 9,000 people. You had to talk to your mods and ambassadors and maybe from time to time to your community, so they knew we weren't just making shit up. You, or more Axel, also treated your community managers like replaceable pieces of shit whose opinions and thoughts didn't matter, when they had even more influence on the community than the mods and ambassadors. Could not have said it better myself. Continuing on. We had hired a community manager by then, Molly explains, but we also had the challenge that as I stepped back from that role, some players felt as though I was abandoning them because I was still the one with the knowledge of the game design. Decisions being made which a new community manager doesn't necessarily have. Again, the problem wasn't that you abandoned the players, the problem was that you were abandoning your moderators. And if you had time to fire people for speaking out, why didn't you have time to properly communicate with your mods before it went that far? These circumstances led to disappointment and to a very negative atmosphere in the server, and eventually the closure of the Discord community, as it simply became unmanageable and unsalvageable. Yes, it became unsalvageable, and that happened because you had bred an atmosphere of toxic positivity. Players didn't feel like they could voice their opinions in the Discord. They felt muzzled and frustrated. They felt like you weren't listening, as did your moderators. And before the negative atmosphere got that bad, you had fired all the moderators because you were angry that they liked a post you disagreed with. This was the post. The past month since the game's release in Europe, I felt like it has been going downhill. First of all, I work on the server for essentially free. Don't get me wrong, but I have no rest. I work 24/7 and I feel mistreated. I get no appreciation for what I do and my work goes unrecognized. You'd think that working so much for free would earn a little thing as a token of appreciation, but nope. Instead, I am a workhorse carrying the entire Discord server. Since the release, the devs basically packed their stuff and left the server in the mods' hands, leaving us with way more work, yet no thank you has been given in any way. The devs don't communicate with neither mods, ambassadors, and most importantly, players. This leads to the players feeling even more anxious and takes it out on mods. At this point, we're just damn punching bags. I am so tired of having to silence people for saying their opinion and rightfully giving the criticism to the decision made here. As a mod, we aren't told when important things happen either. Oh, a new update drop? Let's tell everyone on Instagram so that the server members can get the info to the mods. It's a joke. We need to know these things. Therefore, I have decided to step down, retire as a moderator. I do not support the decisions made by the team. Just to butt in here for half a second, I actually forgot to mention this in my initial script. Molly and Axel, the two creators of Equestrian the Game, actually went into an interview and said that they are still, and I quote, developing Equestrian the Game in collaboration with our community. We interact with them daily. We have our Discord and other social medias. This obviously wasn't true because she hadn't been communicating with anyone, and Molly still wonders why people are pissed. After this post, the moderators and ambassadors would start airing their grievances again, and your response, Molly, was to shut them down. Again, many of us have helped this server and community for more than 1 year, and some have only been here for a few months. But many of us share the same opinions, thoughts and feelings. We are not appreciated, we are not seen, we are taken for granted. Without the moderators, this server would be chaos. It would look horrible. Without any kind of structure, it would have unclear rules and guidelines. It would be dead. I have never seen them get compensated in any kind of form except one mere thank you. They spend more time helping this company and community than the whole ETG team does together. The moderators sit for hours, editing, moderating the chats, keeping the conversations healthy and active. No matter if it's a red day, their vacation, sick day, night, day or work hours, they check the server every day, but they get nothing back. And then Molly responded, "Okay, I'm ending this here. This is not an acceptable way to treat others here, and I'll remove these two as ambassadors." After this, you fired the moderators and ambassadors who liked the previous post, and that resulted in moderators speaking up in the public Discord and players starting to push for more answers and you losing control of your Discord. One of the ex-moderators pointed out, Astride has a far bigger following and they've had a far rougher launch. And do you know an amazing thing? Their Discord is still standing. Just for some context, Astride's launch was met with a lot of pushback from players who were upset with how bare-boned the early access was, some even calling it a tech demo. A tech demo that costs 25 euros. You might see why people were perhaps a teensy bit miffed. Whether you like or hate Astride, no one can deny that the moderators and devs handled the backlash like champs. And their Discord is still standing to this day and is actually quite a friendly place. Nothing is unsalvageable, unless you don't want to put the effort in. Plus, as a happy ending, some of the mods that got fired from ETG ended up at Astride. So don't blame the mods, Molly, they're clearly doing fine. But our pain must continue. It was a harsh experience for me personally, she says, but it's never fun when people online get so angry and upset at you. Absolutely, having people angry at you is not a nice experience by any stretch of the imagination and can be quite upsetting. But you should understand that if it wasn't for your terrible management, none of this would have happened. For a long time, I set this expectation on myself that I had to keep the community informed. You never informed them, that I have to be there for them no matter what time of day. You weren't there for any part of the day. Since I was still doing art for the season passes at the same time, I would do that work on weekends and evenings, feeling like I owed that to the players. Even though the moderators were working like rain or shine, food or none, you're complaining about putting in some extra time. I'm so sorry for you. I realize that players don't care about me. They won't know if I get burned out, that they don't know me, and I don't know them.
Why are you the way that you are?
She said it was a wake-up call, that she couldn't get so personally involved, that she had to step away. If you were just basically involved, like it would have been fine. But the reason why your moderators were angry was because you didn't communicate with them the information they needed. That is why your moderators and your players got angry. They raised their voices over frustrations, and your response to that was to fire them and shut the criticism down. Like, oh, what delusion! I want whatever she's smoking! Another mod had to say this about this particular paragraph. I remember the day the Discord opened worldwide. I was up from 4 a.m, both getting ready for work and doing my ambassador duties, helping the players navigate downloading the game, sending them links to the tutorials we had made and edited for them. I think there was 3 to 4 of us awake at the time. I walked to my dog, ate my breakfast, got changed, sat on the bus to work, walked to work while helping the moderators manage the new members so that they could focus on giving people roles and spotting people breaking rules. And then I panicked when I reached the gate of my work. I sent a message in the ambassador chat telling the mods and devs that I was going to be working for the next 4 hours and then I would be back to help. I spent those 4 hours worried and guilty about leaving the team to handle that influx, unable to hop on and help. But as soon as I was finished with work, which overran because I had to groom a mare in season, I was straight back on the Discord answering questions and catching up on what was missed. I think I remember both of these moderators basically forcing me to go have a toast and bath after finding out I hadn't eaten since breakfast. And we had an entire weekend of that. It wasn't a fun or stress-free week for anyone. And a lot of us had school or work to also deal with on top of the voluntary job we had for them. And that's what a lot of the players forget or didn't realize, that we weren't paid employees. We were there out of the goodness of our hearts and because we truly believed that the game and the team was worth backing. When you listen to these types of stories, it just makes me so angry that nowhere in this article does Molly even acknowledge them. She doesn't thank them. She doesn't mention them. She doesn't even pretend that they existed. The amount of passion and dedication these people gave to your game for free, Molly, should have been treated with more respect and appreciation. Then none of this would have happened. It had nothing to do with the fact that you burned out. If you had told them that, they would have listened, because they understood neither them nor we are as callous as you paint us. Most players and fans are pretty reasonable, even when you're being unreasonable. Most of the comments that were left during the fallout were pretty nice. Some were rough, I sure as heck lost my temper, but most were pretty sensible. What's more, the second everything went tits up, you suddenly appeared and wanted to start communicating with players again. If you had done that from the start, none of this would have happened. Furthermore, do you not think that when 9,000 people rushed into the Discord that your moderators and ambassadors weren't also burned out, and they were doing this for no compensation? Voluntarily? They were doing this in their free time? While having jobs? While going to school? You also dropped them with the breeding update. You f***ed off on a vacation and let the mods sort out the complaints by themselves. And again, I reiterate, it is so convenient that nowhere in this entire article do you even acknowledge these people. You mention the community manager, of course, and you mention yourself how tired you were. But screw the poor people who did this out of the goodness of their hearts. I'm gonna go make some fucking tea to calm down. I need to add whiskey.
A few moments later.
I got my tea. She connects the balancing act to decisions made about the game itself. If you focus too much on what the community wants, or you're afraid to make changes for fear of community backlash, your hands are tied as a developer. Again, we're painted as the monsters. Now, I do agree communities can be unreasonable, but if you feed the flames by treating people poorly or shutting down criticism of your game, you can't really blame anyone but yourself, Molly. And that's the problem. You literally shove all of it onto us and play the victim because you were tired. If you want to learn more about the mods and what happened to them, you can check out the full video here. It was a mess, a horrible mess of bad management and terrible communication. The mods really deserved better, as did the ambassadors, as did the players. They all deserved better. The final part for this section reads, one crucial aspect to remember here, and one that vocal fans and critics are often unaware of, is that any game's online community only accounts for a small fraction of the actual player base, especially in a free-to-play game like ETG. That's also been an important learning for me, Molly adds, to see the bigger picture and not just focus on players who are actively communicating. Okay, so only a fraction of people who play your game actually talk on social media? That's fair. It's general free-to-play market wisdom that only a small fraction of total players spend any money on the game at all. For Equestrian, about 1.5 to 2% of players spend, with spikes noticeable when new seasons or horses release. Those numbers are in the ballpark of industry average. When asking developers to listen to players, one has to keep in mind that the Venn diagram of paying users and vocal users is never a simple circle. So it couldn't be that the people who spent money on your game might feel inclined to be more vocal on your social media, seeing as they spent the money? What I'm saying is that 1.5 to 2% might actually be your small percentage of players on social media that complain because they actually spent money on the game. Just a thought. I'm taking a sip of my tea. It's just a thought. But let's move on to the next part of this article, monetization and mobile audiences. Free to play? Well, not now. It's barely possible to play without paying anything. Everything became so expensive. Nope, not for me anymore. The game was monetizing somewhat, Molly laughs. It sustained us at a certain size, but at the same time, you want to be able to expand a little bit, also get more stability as a studio. We want to run a profitable business and save costs, but also be in a competitive workplace that attracts good talent. This is a sort of response to the aggressive microtransactions they suddenly added into the game between February and March of 2024. If you want to learn more, you can check out my video here that breaks it down a bit more concisely. But here are some highlights. Certain horse breeds would now cost premium currency or real money. All prices for buildings and horses went up, and the trailer refresh button went up from $300 in-game dollars to $7,100. What the hell, ETG? A lot of horses suddenly cost premium currency in the trailer, where before they would only cost in-game currency. Another change that baffled even the greatest of bootlickers was the addition of the website prices, where if you bought on the website, you were supposed to be paying less, but you were actually paying more than in the in-app purchases. But they did apparently fix that, so good on them. No, those are just a few changes they made. Like I said, you can check out the vid here to learn more. It was a mess. Now the problem is that the game had already been expensive before the changes. For example, 1,200 coins cost the same as Elden Ring Deluxe Edition when it first came out. And all you could do with that money initially was buy bland clothes and tack. Those prices are still the same, but with the added bonus that you can barely play without premium currency. What great game design! There was just so much we didn't have in place in the beginning, Molly adds, and that has definitely harmed the profitability of the product. We're still here. We're a 20-person studio now, so it's somewhat successful, but we all know that there's so much we could be doing better. On the one hand, ETG, you weren't making enough to sustain yourself at the current size, but you also wanted to add more people to that group and grow the studio, despite your game not making enough to pay all those people. It's an odd choice, as expansion usually goes with growth. Forcing growth can lead to unsustainable numbers because it can be temporary. You need to have consistent growth over the course of a few months to ensure that when you do hire someone new, they won't be leaving in the next month because you don't have any money. This is just my thought, but I do kind of find it shitty that they wanted to grow as a company, and the way they do that is by screwing over the players with aggressive microtransactions. Why didn't they just stick with a smaller studio until they grew to a size naturally that fitted their aiming thing, but their goal? That's the word I'm looking for, their goal? But one of the challenges for us has been that when we started designing the game, we didn't really design it as a mobile free-to-play game. We just wanted to make a good horse game. She grins and adds, "That was the dream. We got funding, we got to do this. Let's make a good game." You didn't make a good horse game, you made a good time waster. But this is a strange thing to spew out, because you were planning on making a mobile game all the way back on the 9th of February 2018. You know how I know that? You know how I know that? Because here's your f***ing roadmap. You want to see more? Here's a concept of the game. You know what I can see right there? Like right there? A store. You had the store in this game since 2018. This was your game, Molly, since 2018. You also got a grant of around $200,000, and that probably means that you had to have a pretty damn good idea about what the game was going to be all the way back in 2018, because you need to propose this idea. You need to go and convince people that they need to give money for your idea. So you had to have some idea of how you were going to make money with this game. So this idea that you had this noble cause to just make a horse game really doesn't fly when a huge part of your focus has been a fucking store in your game since the first stage of development. You know what I don't see in Rain Ravine? A store. You know what I don't see in Astride? A store. I don't see much else in Astride, but there's definitely not a store. This game. I need whiskey! Molly continues, more sober. I'm not sober! But we're in the situation where we just launched it first, and now we're trying to keep developing it into a successful free-to-play product. You had the game in soft launch for over a year, and you didn't adjust your microtransactions in that time to ensure your game was sustainable. You had beta testing for years, and you didn't think to adjust your microtransactions to ensure your game would be sustainable. And now you're aggressively adding more monetization to your game and ruining it for players who have already invested a lot of money into it. But let's read the next paragraph. When Kavalri started out, they were a very young team of first-time developers, all without experience in creating this kind of product. How precisely the game would be monetized was far from the first thing on their minds, and they've been playing catch-up in various ways since. One example of that is that the option to watch ads in order to get certain in-game benefits or premium currency was only added last fall, which was not so much a conscious omission at launch, but simply not something that was initially considered. You did a mobile game without considering ads. Let me repeat this. You made a mobile game without considering ads.
Brilliant! Brilliant!
So, what is actually being said here is that beyond being incompetent at running a community, you are also incompetent in running a business. So many games today launch without a hitch, both from new developers and all the like. Even if they didn't have the experience, there are a lot of ways that you can try and figure out how to make money on free-to-pay mobile games, like ads. Like ads, I think that's like one of the first things that you learn. They clearly had the plan for cosmetics, as this was part of the development since pretty damn early, and they had a group of beta testers who were happy to give feedback on the game. Oh, wait, they weren't listening to them, so that was pretty pointless mentioning that, wasn't it? A lot of people bought into it, and none of those people ever got their rewards. Yeah, they never got their rewards, to this day. That was promised on the Patreon page. Okay, I am going to be fair here. They did want to branch out and they want to grow the company, so they want to make more money to do so. That's fair. But still, they had their chance to sort the microtransactions out. They had at least a full year to feel the soft launch out and see what was going to work and what wasn't. And they did grow. They went from a 3-man team to a 10-man team to a 20-man team over the course of development. But now they want to grow even more, and they made the microtransactions more aggressive to do so. I understand that you probably don't want to let people go. That would be terrible. But you did fire all the moderators and ambassadors, so you do have a lot of practice. At the very least, it should come naturally. Continuing on, the way Kavalri has been going about optimizing their monetization and turning ETG into a commercially viable product has not always been welcomed by the community. No shit, price increases or adding paywalls to previously free features tend to provoke negative reactions in long-term players. No shit. In discussing the monetization decisions of games, players are often quick to speculate along the lines of, well, obviously so many people are annoyed by the change that the game isn't actually making any more money. While once again forgetting that the vocal community members only ever represent a tiny portion of actual paying users. This comment is damned underhanded because it is directly trivializing anything any of you have ever said online. Because according to this, your opinion doesn't matter. You are a vocal minority. Stop complaining. You don't matter because you don't pay. And yet, Star Stable changed for the better in a lot of ways after the community complained. And here we have Rival Stars. I have some problems with Rival Stars, but good grief, do these guys listen to feedback? It's a microtransaction game, but they still have a PC version. They have pretty horses. They are constantly adding new breeds, new features, like stable space. Stable space, you know, space for the horses. Point is, please stop trivializing people's upset. And if complaining online doesn't matter, why are you still complaining, Alice? Molly goes on to talk about the difficulty in finding a balance for monetization, which is fair. That is an ongoing battle. The way they handled it, again, was bad, and the changes were so sudden and so many that a lot of people are still suffering from whiplash. They could have done this slowly, but then perhaps the company is in a lot more trouble than we realize, so maybe that's the reason they're going for a Hail Mary pass. Or they could just, go back to a 10-man team. That could help. At the sweet spot you were when you were sustainable. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is AI. Oh boy. Their defense of using generative AI is flimsy and insensitive. It's performing great. It's false advertising. I don't know how these people sleep at night. I am never downloading a game from them again unless this stance is completely reversed. We've been consistently testing different types of campaigns, Molly replies, explaining that these campaigns compare handcrafted arts, in-game game footage, concept videos, and stills, as well as AI-generated imagery. I understand the sentiment, she says. At the same time, the AI-generated stills have been performing great, which is why they're consistently used. Molly adds that user acquisition is a huge factor in the success of any free-to-play game, and that the AI-generated images have been a big boost for ETG in that regard. That said, AI is a topic that's both exciting, sensitive, and thought-provoking. It's an extremely powerful tool that's used by us in various ways. The best practices and how to do is something that's subject to internal discussions within our studio and our stakeholders right now. We still have some ways to go in terms of defining a framework for how we approach the topics of incorporating AI in our work going forward. Beyond the ethical issues of using AI to promote your game, the actual problem is that for a long while, you were making false advertisements. In a video from Abigail Pinehaven, she shows ads that have hoof care. caring for the horse, something we definitely do not have in ETG. They also showcased different models of horses, but the main thing was this hoof care thing. So it's essentially false advertising. Furthermore, Nora, a player of ETG, wrote an email to their company and told them about the poor advertising and promised to reel in their marketing team. I don't think that actually worked. You need to go talk to them again. I took this directly from Abigail's video, so yeah, go watch the video. So it's not only bad to use AI, it is bad to use AI to give false impressions of what your game is. This does not represent your game. This does not represent your game. Please stop using this and just show your game. But that means we have a second issue to consider. If still images and videos of your game are not doing as well as badly rendered AI images, then perhaps your game just doesn't look enticing enough to play. And that is a big problem. The only saving grace this game has ever had is its horse models and animations that are pretty good, and people love that. But unfortunately, the game has a very subdued color palette, and if you put this next to this, you're more than likely going to go to this. I do understand their conundrum. They had a very specific style and feel in mind for ETG, but before deciding on your style and graphics, ensure that it won't fade into the background when compared to other games in the genre. It has to stand out on its own, and it should never not entice. But the ethical problems still stand, and if you want to learn, go check out Abigail's video, the place where I stole this screenshot from. I hope she does not sue me. Now we can get into the final section, ETG and beyond, Kavalri's future. Cue the Star Trek music. That's not Star Trek! Asked about the studio's plans for the future, Molly reveals that Kavalri is planning to make more games rather than forever expand their first project. There is something in the works that will become our next game, she teases, then laughs. It's in a very early stage, so there's not much to say about it, but we're very excited to be making a new game, something Kavalri hasn't done in a while. Yeah, no shit, this is the only game you've made. We are approaching a point where we'll consider ETG feature complete, Molly tells the main quest exclusively, aware that this will come as a surprise to long-term players. Yeah, no shit, cause it's not done. We had very many features planned initially, Molly says. By now we are having important discussions as to what we actually can do on this project and what may have to be removed from the roadmap, even though we've always wanted to do it. So this means that they are going to move on from the game, and as they stated earlier, we'll be making something new. I'm glad they're making something else. It is always good to see new horse games in development. But the statement doesn't end here. The game has been in development for about 7 years now, says Molly, and explains that this long lifetime means that some of the initially built systems absolutely do not lend themselves to being updated. The game's tutorial is one of those things Molly has been wanting to update for a long time. Breeding isn't even in the tutorial because the tutorial breaks as soon as you touch it. The issue admittedly becomes more complicated if there's genuine learning on behalf of first-time devs like Kavalri, where they start out fully confident that a specific feature will be added eventually, but then need to come around and say that actually no, something that was initially promised won't be feasible after all, as Kavalri had to do in the meantime with their announcement that the long-planned dressage feature has been scratched from the roadmap.
I did feel like a clown spending money to create a couple of horses with a dressage stats just for it then to be pulled from implementation. Haha!
And this, I believe, is sort of the nail in the coffin. Dressage has been promised since the very start of this game's development. They showcased half passes, extended trots and POps, which are all dressage. Plus, it means that these systems had been in development since the start, because these posts are old and we have dressage training in this game for f***ing sake. But the point is that they were working hours upon hours upon hours getting these dressage moves right, and instead of adding them into the actual gameplay as competitions, they decided not to because they didn't know how and still don't. I understand, again, inexperience, and I do appreciate it, but 7 years on a game and what you have to show is half finished at best. The thing is, I can see from the outside what the problem was. You were so focused on trying to monetize that you forgot to actually make a game people wanted to play. And you could have cornered that market for dressage because there aren't good games with dressage mechanics. And instead of capitalizing on that, you let that opportunity slide you by. So instead, you made yet another show jumping game, and not even a good one. I also want to add into this that I think what also could have happened is that perhaps the amounts of grants they got kind of went to their head, and instead of focusing on the game that they really wanted to make, their concept kept growing and growing and growing as the budget kept growing. And so they kind of bit off more than they can chew. That is absolutely fair. But at the end of the day, it's still the people who invested money, players, who are suffering for this. Their game is getting abandoned, not only yours. And this actually means that beyond being incompetent at business and management, you, ETG, are now also incompetent game developers. I just can't see you doing this right the second time, because from what you're saying, especially about the community fiasco, you haven't learned anything. And then we have this glorious little tidbit in the article. The kind of players whose loud in comment sections rarely react with grace and kindness to such news. And I'm asking my readers to consider this when voicing their own reactions to this article. Stop policing how people should talk. This is the reason the Wildshade server and ETG server got shut down, because policing thoughts and emotions gets under people's skin. Being impolite does not mean you lose an argument. Getting upset by an impolite comment shows that you lost it from the start. Feedback comes in all shapes. It's not always going to be a nice shape. It's how you handle the feedback that will determine whether it grows into something nicer. Again, look at how Astride handled it. The best advice that I can give to anyone running a community is listen. I don't always listen, but I try. And if you at least show that you're trying, people will respect you for trying. With all this talk of Equestrian's development approaching an end, Molly still tells me that there are some exciting features still in the pipeline. Most importantly, stable customization and cross-country riding, which have been officially announced in the meantime. Those are two pretty major features that were a long time coming, that I think players will be happy about. At the very least, they're still going to be working on the game, so they are adding some features before it is abandoned completely. The reaction to this article was not the best. As we can see by these comments, people are upset about the dressage removal, about the brushing off of the absolutely horrendous Discord situation, and the AI usage with no remorse. It's a face I never wanted to see from Kavalri, an honest face. It's the most honest we'll ever get, and that's terrifying. And I'm done. This was a long video with a lot of ups and downs, but this article was one of the most frustrating pieces I'd ever read. Shrugging off promised features like it's a joke is bad form. Trivializing and belittling your fanbase's concern is bad form. I don't know how this will affect the game, but I can't imagine it'll be anything good. Perhaps it's best, Molly, to drop the game and run. You might just manage to run fast enough to prevent your company from getting a stain dark enough to smudge it out of existence completely.